All right, we've got the recording going.
Okay,
Welcome
Jeff.
everybody. Welcome everybody here to the Freedom Hub Working Group. We're at the March 27th edition, and we're having Jeffrey Tucker speak with us today. It's going to be pretty exciting. And Charles, I'd like you to do a little housekeeping and introduction here.
Well, thanks, Jeff. And it's a great honor today to have a well-known libertarian icon, Jeffrey Tucker, going to present to us some of his thoughts based on an essay that caught my eye, "The Markets Love You." And I do hope that we get to touch on some of his book titles too, because they are just fantastic from a perspective of anyone loving liberty. Whiskey for Breakfast. I don't have all the titles in front of me right now, but A Jetson's World, How to Sabotage Your Showerhead or something. So either through Q&A or your presentation, Jeff, I definitely want to ask you about those titles. They sound like great titles to have on your coffee table as you have friends over for for coffee or whiskey. But to preview upcoming guests over the next month, we have the next go around, Paul Jacob, on how to go around the politicians through the initiative process. And then we have Dr. Jeff Singer from Cato, going to talk about the alarmism over this war on pain patients and pain doctors, the so-called opioid crisis. And finally, at the end of the month, we're going to have Jonathan Bidlack from reducespending.org. He's going to talk about his project to embarrass politicians who overspend, so we can finally figure out some way to actually get this government to reduce its size and scope. But as far as Jeffrey Tucker goes, he is at the American Institute for Economic Research. More recently, he was at the Foundation for Economic Education and the Mises Institute. He does have a history with Dr. Ron Paul, and he is a scholar and a very popular speaker. Freedom Fest, Jeff, that's where you talked to him this past year. All the major conferences, Jeff is a known quantity. So we are very excited to have Jeff tell us why the markets love you. Jeff, and I'll turn it over to you, Jeff Canner, first to move things on.
Okay, very good. Thanks very much. So yes, we're going to have Jeff actually kind of do a little live broadcast with us here today, and he's going to speak for about a half hour thereabouts, and then we're going to open it up to some nice questions.
All right, we ready to begin then?
I would say.
Okay, let's go.
Have at it.
First of all, thanks for inviting me. I'm really glad to be here, and it's a topic I'm really excited about. The title of my new book, which should be out in about, I would say, maybe a month. I'm kind of in the process of doing the final edits. Is called, actually, let me change my microphone. 1 second. I think I can do better. How about that?
Oh, that is nice.
Okay, you hear me better?
Oh, like a radio voice now.
All right. Yeah, this is my Yeti thing. Anyway, yeah, so I am working on this new book, and I'm really excited about it. It's about 400 pages, and it's largely built off material I've been writing for the American Institute for Economic Research, which is where I am right now. One of the things I love about working at AIR is that, well, I'm the editorial director, so I've been able to set up a kind of an editorial policy that's a little different from anything I've ever used before. Power saver. Okay, there we go. It's a little different from anything I've ever done before because basically we have an 86-year-old history, and we're kind of founded to speak to the intelligent layperson, which in practice for us means people involved in the financial industry, people that they're in kind of leadership positions, relatively well educated, and that sort of thing. So what it means editorially is that we never have to condescend. We're not pursuing some strange strategy of only speaking to a small market segment or something weird like that. It's for us all about finding the best possible writers and speaking and using every bit of wits and intelligence that you have. So it's been really nice for me. And there's not a particular ideological agenda attached to the place. But what it means in practice is that we can just have the best people writing whatever they want. For me personally, it challenges me intellectually. So I never have to channel my writing in a particular philosophical or demographic way, I can just really write what it is I'm thinking and be as honest and forthright as possible. And I've been doing this now for about 14 months, and I must say, after 30 years in this business, I feel like this is the best work I've ever done. The material I've written over the last 14 months is as authentic and good as it gets. I mean, it's as good as I get, which may not be as good as I should be, but it's the best work I know how to do. So I'm really proud of the work that I've done here. And so a lot of the essays in this book are based on this theme. And the title of the book is "The Market Loves You: Why You Should Love It Back." And so it's a ton of essays celebrating the market and its innovative capacity, its ability to bring people together, form communities, surprise us always with things we didn't think about, it, outwit any individual mind, outwit the planners and the state, get around the regulators, reveal to us things we didn't know, feed the world, make the world a more beautiful place. And this aspect of markets is what enraptures me more than any other thing. And I think it's also the least appreciated aspect of markets. I would call it a kind of aesthetic that we need to adopt to fully appreciate the role of markets in the world. We have to adopt an aesthetic and really find within the human communities produced by the market economy an aspect of love. And I'll get to that in just a little bit. But before I do, let me tell you a quick parable that I read from Kierkegaard that I think illustrates the point. And his parable, he wrote hundreds of parables. He's a great parable writer. And I found this one called The Parable of the Two Artists. And it goes like this. The first artist is a great artist, convinced of his ability and well-trained and expert and well-traveled all over the world. And his aspiration was to find the most beautifully perfect face and paint it, and paint the most beautiful, thereby paint the most beautiful painting. And he went all over the world and looked, and every face he found fault with. There was some failing, some problem, some error, some imperfection, and could not ultimately find something that he thought was worthy of his paintbrush. He gave up the craft entirely and left being a painter in a state of despair. The second painter was not as good, not well-traveled, not well-trained, but every face in his small circle of friends he'd found beauty within it. And so he couldn't stop painting, and ended up painting many, many beautiful paintings because he had a special kind of eye that he could look at a person's face and see something wonderful and paint it. And Kierkegaard asked the question, which of the two is the better painter? And his answer is obviously the second painter, because the painter could see beauty where other people failed to see it and could extract that beauty and appreciate it, and therefore do the job of an artist, whereas the first one was never able to become that artist because he kept looking for perfection. I think of critics of the market as the first artist. You know, they look out at the market and its workings and they can't do anything but find imperfections. Oh, here's a monopoly. Here's something that's wasting resources. Here's a product that fails. Here's an industry that's insufficiently distributed throughout all areas of population. Here's a workforce that's not sufficiently diverse and needs to be browbeat and kicked around by regulators. You know, that's what you're going to get on the left. Or in the right, you're going to see people say, oh, look, the market is failing. The trade deficit is showing that we're buying more from China than they're buying for us. We have to fix that. Forget the billions of supply chains that are involved in making U.S.-China trade possible. Forget the amazing miracle that's happened in China that's taken billions of people out of poverty and given us unprecedented prosperity in a region that used to be racked by communist tyranny and poverty and death. None of that matters. All that matters is the one imperfection you can find. It's a kind of a moral failing that is sometimes called in theological circles scrupulosity. You know, you find one error and you just obsess about that instead of looking at the bigger picture, which is the beauty all around us. I think defenders of the market need to be that second artist and not the first artist. The first artist is a planner, a critic, a regulator, a person who's always looking for ways to manipulate, regulate, and distort and intervene in the markets, whereas the second painter is just impressed at the beautiful order that's emerged out of in the absence of planning, and it should impress us. And I think we, as defenders of the market, need to get better at recognizing this all around us. And I just want to quickly tell you what happened to me just before the seminar, just to kind of illustrate the point, all right? So, and again, my notifications are going crazy. So, I just stopped by the grocery store because I woke up this morning craving of an avocado with Greek oil. I didn't have it. I don't want that to happen tomorrow morning. So I went to the grocery store. You know, they don't know that I'm coming. Nobody at that grocery store knew that Jeffrey Tucker is coming in looking for avocados, so let's make sure and get them there. No, they have them already there, ready for anybody who happens to walk in wanting an avocado, and they have to take a guess. I mean, they could be wrong. Nobody may ever want an avocado again. There's no way to know for sure. But I walk in, and there's a huge bushel of these things for $1.59. I don't know where they came from. In particular, it could have been from somewhere in Latin America. I don't know. But a lot of trucks, a lot of flight, a lot of entrepreneurship, a lot of farmers were involved in getting that avocado here. And so you've got probably hundreds of people working on a farm, and hundreds of people working in the transportation industry, and hundreds of people working in the industries that built the machinery, that dug the land, that harvested the avocados, put them on trucks, brought them all the way here to finally land in a place that's like super convenient for me. I just drive down the street, walk in, and pay $1.50 for an avocado. I mean, it's just unbelievable. So I bought like 15, you know, and shared them with other people because I'm so impressed by this. This is amazing. And tomorrow morning I'm going to get up. I'm going to slice it open. I'm going to dig it out and pour some Greek olive oil that comes from Greece. For God's sake, it's like an ancient treasure. And I'm going to mix it with one of 60 spices I bought the other day on Amazon. So I was out of special salts and beautiful spices, just out. And so I went to Amazon. I found a place where I could buy 60 spices for $80. And they came in beautiful glass bottles. Salts from around the world, herbs from all over the place, spices from Latin America, from Asia. And I reflected back on, you know, in the Middle Ages and before, and the spice trades involved, you know, going to far-flung lands and taking 3-month-long trips and returning with just a handful of spices that you could sell for more than the price of gold. And, you know, half your team would have been dead, if not most of the team, you know, because travel was so incredibly dangerous and the spice trade was extremely lucrative. But you could not be a regular person like I am and expect to get the treasures from around the world. I got 60 of them for $80, and there's big bottles, and they're just glorious, amazing things. We just have zero appreciation for it. I mean, even like this new and very interesting popularity of exotic salts, you know, Himalayan salt. Oh, here's a smoked salt. Oh, here's a coriander salt, and so on. You've seen it. It's glorious. It's really exciting. It's fun to we've seen salt become fun again. 20 years ago, there's only one kind of salt you could buy, but it was still cheap, which is amazing because you can go back to the ancient world and discover that salt was once so rare that it itself was money, which is to say it was the most valuable good in the entire world, which I get. If you've ever had to gone a day without eating food with Just completely unsalted, you'll be shocked at how tasteless food really is without salt. So now we have salt from all over the world. Just click a button, they're arriving at my doorstep. Absolutely glorious. So that was my trip to the grocery store. Oh, and by the way, I was there, I picked up some lemons. Now, there was a time in history when scurvy was a leading cause of death because you couldn't get lemons on trips, and people didn't even know what was causing it. And even if you did know what was causing it, how are you going to get a lemon? How are you going to get a lemon to take a boat from Spain to the New World? I'm just like, there's no way to get a lemon. You know, they were the rarest and most. The difference between a lemon was the difference between life and death on one of these trips. Now we don't even think about it. We just go to the store and like, yeah, give me a bag of lemons. Oh, it's $5. You know, I mean, this is the market at work, and it was amazing. So I left the grocery store, and I noticed there was a hardware store right there. So I went over there because I wanted to get a new shower head. I walked in. Of course, they have 14 glorious shower heads that I can choose from. I got the cheapest one because the cheapest ones are the easiest ones to hack. And I took it to the counter and I said to the guys, hey, the shower head looks great, but I bet you it has one of those flow stoppers that's required by government regulations. They all confirmed it. Yeah, those things are terrible, right? So here's the difference between the government and the market. The market gives me what I want: avocados, beautiful salts, oil from Greece, lemons, a shower head just because it happens to be there. Everything's perfect. And then here's government showing up. You are going to use too much water. So they stick this little flow stopper in there. Got to get it out. So I'm at the counter. I said, hey, gentlemen, why don't we just fix the shower head together? And they're like, yeah, how are you going to do that? I said, well, give me a screwdriver and a hammer. So I set it down, pop the screwdriver in there, and give it a big bonk with the hammer. Bonk, 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 boom. Turn it upside down. Out comes the flow stopper in the shower head. The entire team there at the hardware store started cheering. Oh, hooray! You fixed the shower head. It was really fun. So for $6, I brought it back and stuck it in my shower here, and now I've got a glorious shower. So that, to me, this is a great illustration of the difference between the markets and the government. The market's giving you a beautiful shower. And by the way, do we need to talk about indoor plumbing? Rarest thing in the world. It was only common in the United States, just before World War II and after. Before that, there wasn't such a thing as indoor plumbing. We don't even appreciate it. But nonetheless, that's, again, the market at work. The market gives us beautiful things, and government's just doing nothing but messing it up. So my perspective on all of this is that we need to appreciate not just the products that have been given to us, and truly, if you think about it, everything you love in life is given to you by the markets. The ability of Ed Stringham just to be able to call my phone, and this phone is sticking in my pocket, whereas when I was being raised, phones were always attached to the wall, and you had to share them with other family members. So the idea that you would have an individualized phone for yourself with your own phone number that you carry around is inconceivable. Inconceivable. Nobody would have even believed something like this would happen. Now we don't even think anything of it. We just take it for granted. We take everything for granted, even though the market is the source of all the things we love in life. But it's more than that. And here I would like to make a reference to an essay that I build my book around by C.S. Lewis. And he says that the English word love is too aggregated, that there's many different levels of love. There's love that comes from just an appreciation of the value of somebody else in your life. The fact that you have some respect for their dignity. Where does that come from? Well, it comes from engagement with them at some level. So the nice man who gave me a bag at the grocery store today and greeted me so warmly and asked where I was from, and we had a quick charming conversation. Now, I don't know his name. He doesn't know my name, but we had a sense of value in each other. Now you could say, well, that's just a transaction. I guess. I mean, yeah, I'm giving them money. They're giving me products. We both benefit from that exchange, but through that exchange, we come to value each other's place in the world. There's no particular reason to value people, actually. I mean, you could say, oh, you should always value people. Yeah, but it's also nice to have a good reason to do so. He was there to help me with my bags, give me a warm greeting. My having gone there to shop is a major reason, the major reason, I and others, that he has a job and that he can take care of his family, that he can pay his rent and have a warm place to live and pay his heating and cooling bills. Because of people like me, he can live a better life. Because of people like him, I can live a better life. This helps form community. So just that familiarity, that's the first level of love in C.S. Lewis's view. The second level is friendship. And you think about it, like you think about the people you're really friends with, very likely many of them come out of some kind of economic relationship you have with them as co-workers, just people that you encounter in the course of in the course of your commercial life and your professional life. You develop friendships. You get to know people by name. You care about them. When are their birthdays? We celebrate their birthdays. We want to know if they get sick. We want to know, is there some way I can make your life better if you find yourself in a bad way? You develop these friendship networks, most of which grow out of these kind of commercial relationships. So the market is the source of that second kind of love. A third kind of love, he would describe as being what we commonly think of as being romantic intimacy or eros or something like that. And I thought for a long time, how does that pertain in the market? And I tell you where it comes from. I think it comes, and that little tiny noise you might be hearing in the background, I'm going to shut that down. Let's see. Yeah, I don't know if I can. Sorry. I would say that eros appears in the marketplace through acts of entrepreneurship. This is where you see kind of an uncontrolled, I would say almost irrational passion for pursuing something even though it slightly doesn't make sense. And that's what romantic love, I mean, it doesn't make a lot of sense. It taps something within us and gives rise to a kind of an emotion that helps you see the world in a slightly different way. Like if you've ever been in love and spring arrives and the birds sound beautiful and the trees are lovely and you're willing to reconsider views that you had before, and maybe you're glad to think they're wrong and see other things in a different way, and you hear songs on the radio and suddenly they're penetrating you emotionally and deeply. And that's sort of what love does for us, right? It renews the face of the earth and renews our hearts and our souls and our outlooks on life. That's what love does. Well, that's really, if you've ever been involved in an entrepreneurial project, it's very similar. You fall in love with an idea, you pursue it irrationally, you take wild risks, you lie awake at night thinking about your next business plan, about the consumers you can reach. You try so hard as an entrepreneur to understand the world through the perspective of possible consumers and discern their needs and meet them through self-sacrifice, through great personal sacrifice. This line that entrepreneurs are just pillaging people and getting rich at other people's expenses, very much the opposite of what's true. So often people who are business people who are starting new businesses and taking new risks in the market give of themselves so profoundly. They always pay their workers before they pay themselves. They plow any new profits into the business to expand and feed this thing. I would say that's entrepreneurship really does sample that sort of third kind of love. And then the final kind of love that he talks about is the unconditional love that is a transcendent relationship between God and the human person. And people criticize the market for failing to meet that kind of thing. Like they'll say it's spiritually vapid, just to focus on the material world, or that the market doesn't give us that kind of true sense of meaning we have in life. And I guess I would say to that you're expecting too much. The markets can meet a lot of needs. They can, lead to challenges and do glorious things, but they're not going to finally give you a sense of meaning in life. That has to come from outside of markets, and it damn sure needs to happen. But it can't neither can anything you can criticize the market for failing to give us. You can't get that through the state, actually, either, and especially not. And this is like the big problem with 20th century totalitarianism, is that it does try to provide us meaning, and it fails to do so. I would say this is true of the left and the right. They're always trying to find some way. Like you listen to the new nationalist movement around the world. Everybody's of the opinion that we're going to find meaning through collective association with the nation state, and they get all fired up about that. Whether it's trade war or real war or ethnic cleansing or whatever kind of ghastly plots that people have, this is not a good way to find meaning, and it ultimately is a futile effort. Or on the left, they think you're going to find meaning through pursuing social justice, which really just amounts to tearing other people down and smearing other people for their biology or history, or making people feel guilty for things they didn't actually do, or sowing resentment because of the absence of equality and all these things. Both the left and the right, to my mind, are based on various forms of resentment and hatred, and faulty views of cause and effect in the world, whereas the markets are genuinely based on love and community, beauty and art, creativity, and the emergence of this lovely order that we see around us that no one in particular planned, but nonetheless grows out of human volition and the magic of contact with other people, which I think is ultimately rooted in love. So that's the theme of my book. Now, one of the things that I find, since you wanted to know something about me and my past books, I'll just kind of give you a quick tour of where I've been intellectually, and then we can open it up for questions. But my first book was Bourbon for Breakfast, and it was a celebration of kind of doing unconventional things, and it all grew out of an insight that was given to me by an older Southern gentleman. I went over to his house for breakfast, and he offered me bourbon, and I was so excited. I thought, wait, am I allowed to drink bourbon at 7 a.m.? And he said, well, sure. And I remember like how much that opened my mind to the possibility that we need to craft our own lives and not just constantly listen to the civic ethos to tell us what to do. And so that whole book is about fun ways to not be normal, to figure out ways to live freely. This next book was a celebration of the then emergent. By the way, my first book was actually a book on Gregorian chant. So Bourbon for Breakfast, I think, must have been 2009 or 2010. And then the next book was a celebration of the digital world. It's a Jetsons world. And it was all about, the beauty of digits and how they're, the markets working through digital economies are helping us to discover the power of knowledge. And the whole middle section in there is on the question of intellectual property. I'm really proud of that book. My third book was Beautiful Anarchy, which was about how to use the digital age to curate and form your own life. And really, that book's probably been translated more than any other. I had another collection of essays to come out in between, but then the book I wrote most recently before this one was a book on right Hegelianism. It's my darkest work, and I really hated writing that book, but I felt like I had to because it was responding to the rise of nationalism in the world. I don't think that people really understand where it comes from, so I attempted to map out the emergence of a kind of a right collectivist tradition from 1820 up to the present. It's non-socialist, or I should say non-leftist. It's a form of socialism that takes nationalistic forms, racialistic forms, protectionist forms, and leads to authoritarianism. And I really did work to kind of show the emergence of this tradition over from 1820 all the way up to the present. And I really did not like writing that book, but it's something I became obsessed with. And I was glad that it came out when it did, because it's been very helpful for a lot of people. But for me personally, I was ready to move on, and that's when I moved to AIR, and I've been writing these celebrations of all these things ever since. And one of the things that's most funny about, to me, when I look back at this new book that's coming out, as compared to the Jetsons world, right? The Jetsons world was all about every cool thing going on in the world of commerce and all about technology. And I would say the same thing is true for Beautiful Anarchy. You know, I just couldn't stop loving the new things. This new book has got filled with essays about historical technologies that I've variously fallen in love with, like mechanical clocks or iron skillets, you know, cars with a stick shift, and the development of the airplane, and the availability of food in the grocery store, and these sort of things are much simpler ideas, and it's a much more, I would say, nostalgic work that really just tries to find beauty and love in the simplest things all around us. And I hope that that's going to be the takeaway that people come up from the book. So, like, I don't think that there's anything really wrong with markets that a different outlook won't fix. We can make ourselves much happier people if we can learn to be like that second artist and find beauty in the marketplaces all around us, find beauty in our coworkers and our working spaces and the technologies we use every day and the things we buy, the food we can have, all the little comforts and things that have been working now for centuries and centuries and centuries to improve our lives, ennoble the human spirit, to develop ever broader, inclusive communities. To me, that is a humanitarian vision of the markets. It's an aesthetic of beauty. It's an aesthetic of love. And I think the best way we can defend the markets to ourselves and to our friends and to others is to highlight that aspect of things more than anything else. So that's what my book's devoted to. So I'll stop right there and open it up for questions. I took longer than I was supposed to, but my apologies.
No, that was, Jeff, that was fine. And I'll tell you, boy, you've reached an awesome place. I have to tell you, that was a really warming and fun thing to listen to, and brought a tear to my eye, I have to say. It was quite good. But you're right about that. And what's happened is, I think what you hit was the idea of taking it for granted. It's so easy to take all these new iterations. It's like the phone in your pocket for granted. And then suddenly it's like entitlement or selfishness suddenly emerges because you've just forgotten, just like we said, we're focusing on the most unbelievable things that we shouldn't be. And then I think also to the people that were giving us some pushback on that fourth situation, I think what the market has done is given people the chance to have time to be more reflective or more religious or whatever it may be. So that, sure, I think the market is working in that respect too.
That's true too.
So that was very good. Charles, did you have any last comments before we really do open it up for questions?
Well, I would just invite attendees to click the raise hand icon they can see in the window at the upper right of their screen, and Jeff or I can unmute you to ask that question. I'll start it off. Jeff, that was fantastic, and I do love that part of your talk about how the market allows you to be different. I think one problem a lot of market critics have is that when you think of the word market, you think sometimes of conformity with the corporate world, the rat race. And I know at least with the health thing that Jeff and I are involved with, we see the future allowing a lot of different individual healthcare treatments in people's desires. But there's also that cartel aspect of the market with the crony control of the regulations to enforce conformity from top down. Do you have some more thoughts on that contrast within the market, sure, between that pressure to conform, not to stand out, or they'll get you, to that desire to find your own path?
Yeah, I thank you for bringing that up, because I mean, this is extremely important. I was writing about this the other day about identity politics in general. And it was an essay I wrote about this phrase that was emerged in 1969 called "the personal is the political." The problem with that phrase is that it's actually unlivable, because if you're going to turn the personal into the political, you're going to have to throw out diversity. naturally, because you're going to have to create collectives, because politics only operates through large-scale groups with single solutions, whereas human experience is infinitely diverse. So if you're going to say the personal is the political, you're going to naturally have to collectivize everybody, and that means overriding people's personal preferences and the freedom to curate and develop your own life. To be an individual is essentially impossible within a political world. And I'm glad you brought up this healthcare example. Like, the most egregious thing that I can think of in recent history with healthcare thing was the way Obamacare was crafted. You know, where you get a room full of people and they're like, what kind of healthcare do you think people ought to have? What do you think? And people start saying, well, I think they ought to have this, I have this. What about this? Oh, sure, people should have that. Yeah, what about this? Yeah, they're gonna have that. So they just got a whiteboard and they're writing every kind of benefit that people ought to have. And they're like, okay, that's pretty good. Now what should we do? Well, I'm thinking, let's pass it as legislation and send a note to all the healthcare providers to say you have to do this. Healthcare providers got the memo and said, well, we got a problem because all this stuff is going to raise premiums. I remember the first note I got, because I was really proud of my private insurance when I finally got it, you know, away from the companies. By the way, I don't think healthcare should be provided by businesses. There's a history there. I think it should be bought by individuals. So I bought my own healthcare. I was really proud of it. And I wished I had kept the letter, but I got a letter in the mail that said, listen, we got some bad news in light of the ACA or whatever it's called. You were previously paying $400, $300 a month. We had to add a zero to that. So now you have to pay $3,000 a month. And I just looked at this letter and I laughed. I thought, well, this is the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. Obviously, this amounts to a cancellation of my policy, right? I mean, it's just absurd. And so I think even the letter said that we're going to presume that you're going to cancel in light of this. I mean, I think it was. I should have kept the letter. It was the most remarkable thing. But this is what happens. It's like the forcing conformity and forcing collectives and presuming that everybody has the same preferences and the same needs, and your individual life just simply doesn't matter. So this is the choice we face. We have a market-driven society where people are able to live their own lives and develop their own diets, live in the places where they want to live, have the kind of houses they want to have, take the kind of vacations they want to have, and so on and so on, listen to the music they want to have. Or we have a society that's ruled by the state, in which case your preferences don't matter. You're going to become part of a group, and you're basically conscripted into a politically relevant unit. That's the only choices we have.
That's great. Jeff, I think I see David Demarest with his hand up.
He does. Yes, David, go for it.
Hi, Jeffrey. This is David Demarest with Roads to Freedom Foundation.
Yep.
I've developed a concept that I call golden rule anarchy that, in my view, dominates most of our personal and business relationships in the free market of all human interactions. How does that idea relate to your concept of entrepreneur market-driven love?
Yeah, well, your golden rule is like, do unto others. This is a really interesting aspect of the emergence of markets in general. You know, when they first came into the world, this is something of a conjectural history. They come out of a realization that continually stealing from each other and devaluing each other's rights is not helpful to anyone. But if I propose to you a deal, you respect my rights, I'll respect your rights. You try it out for a little while. What you find is that cooperating together makes you both wealthier than you otherwise would have been. It's called the division of labor. And Adam Smith talks about this at great length. It's the single most important discovery in the history of humanity, because out of that realization that we could do more together in cooperation with each other than we could ever achieve on our own by pillaging and looting others, is what gives rise to the security of private property. It gives rise to contracts. It incentivizes us to keep our promises, out of which grows a kind of ethics of human behavior and morality of human engagement. I mean, the market itself is what gave birth, or I should say made operational, ethical systems, without which ethics are just complete abstraction. If you live in a world of extreme scarcity where you have to kill people and steal to get a bite to eat, ethics are non-operational. They're just complete abstractions. It's markets that encourage us to keep our word, recognize the dignity of others, do unto others as we would have them do to us, and that insight that it's actually in my interest to get along with other people and respect other people's rights, that gives birth to the marketplace and is responsible for all the prosperity around us. And so I think that's a beautiful rule. I get tired of preachers of morality that don't have an appreciation for the contribution that markets have made in making ethics realizable. I mean, because of markets, you don't have to kill somebody to get a bite to eat. That's hugely important. I think we owe a lot of what we call morality, ethics, doing the right thing, to the institution of the markets themselves. And which is to say, we, our side, defenders of the market, which is to say that we, the defenders of the market, should have the moral high ground. We always do have the moral high ground, actually, but we so rarely claim it because I'm not sure that we believe that strongly enough, which is another reason I wrote the book.
To that, because I would say that you know, us claiming and owning the high ground, we seem like we're too humble for everyone's own good type
Yeah,
of
right.
thing, I think. So that was good. Any other questions from the peanut gallery? I see there's wowed everybody into the little cocoon there.
Jeff,
Go ahead, Charles.
I think we've unmuted everyone. So, folks, if you want to unmute yourself, go ahead and ask your question about your market and anything about Jeff's essay or books. How to drink whiskey in the morning correctly.
I'm very excited about my new work because, well, I'm not as excited about it as I am other people's books, but I felt like for a long time, like I consider myself a libertarian and I hang around with libertarians a lot, but I feel like libertarianism as a movement has lacked a kind of appreciation for the aesthetic of liberalism that undergirds it, that grew out of the high Middle Ages and have governed us up to now. You know, this longing for community, the way markets incentivize us to be inclusive of ever more people and to engage with ever more people. I think this is a feature of markets that we've not really understood it fully, and I'm hoping that my book will help to correct that a little bit, giving people a greater sense of the beauty, love, and aesthetic romance of living in a commercial society.
Abigail?
Yeah, hello, my name is Abigail Noble. I am founder of Michigan Healthcare Freedom. This is more than a 4-minute question, so possibly a future session might be useful. You've heard in healthcare that the market will always fail. Are you familiar with any refutation of that old Kenneth Arrow research paper from the 60s? There's so much current regulation in healthcare that is founded on that, I believe, false premise. It would be really nice to have a ready at hand counter argument for it.
The view that markets in healthcare always fail. You know, that reminds me again of the first artist, you know, who's always looking for the market to do things that it just simply can't do, and certainly no alternative to the market can do it. I mean, like every single intervention in the medical industry that's been undertaken, at least in the U.S., since the progressive era has resulted in higher prices, more exclusion, fewer options, less service, less innovation. I mean, this is the history that we can look at for the last 100 years. It's actually more than that. It's like 105 years or maybe a little longer, because the very first regulation, I think it was regulation of medical schools, that basically restricted the supply of doctors. You know, like, thanks a lot, government, you know? So I don't know. I would say that the truth is the opposite. It's that every intervention in the medical industry has failed miserably, and the markets miraculously keep surviving. They've even survived Obamacare, which is like something unbelievable. By the way, did you see that I think the Trump administration is pursuing a kind of a court repeal of Obamacare, which I hadn't looked into too carefully, but basically I support. I mean, I think what we need to do is get rid of as many government regulations as we can right now, and then just watch markets work. If we can have more options, we're going to see more competition and prices fall, and at least restore the status quo ante, and then start taking care of the other regulations. Ultimately, I'd like to get rid of this third-party funded healthcare and get it like a real market, so you can actually have prices working like you do at the grocery store or in veterinary services or in cosmetic surgery, which are actually markets that are functioning very, very well. Which is
Well, I'm familiar with I do like the Trump administration's multi-prong approach. Definitely the courts. I'm in favor of basically every challenge that's ever been brought against Obamacare. More power to them. And I also like the change in regulations to broaden the definition of insurance and disrupt that market. I see some good ideas coming out of the administration. And yeah, the free market innovation, the more space we can give it, the better.
Yep. And you've got to have the patience to let the market work. This is like NPR this morning, or one of these places, was complaining about, like, if you get rid of Obamacare, people are going to lose their health care. Well, you know, that may happen actually, but then it'll create a template that we can have new options available. But you've got to give it a little bit of time. I mean, you can't just, like, you know, be like these people. Look at what's happened. You know, I don't actually believe that Obamacare has done anything to expand access to healthcare. I think it has on paper, but people are more afraid to go to the doctor now than they ever have been in their lives.
And honestly, the Heritage pretty well disproved that. It was a shunt over into Medicaid, and nobody chooses Medicaid if they don't have to. It's really, I don't think they need to worry about people being kicked off from Obamacare. They have to hurry up before people actually dump it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Obamacare. We've either got to go to full single payer, which is going to bankrupt the country and, like, destroy everything, or we got to go to a free market. But the current status quo cannot survive.
Jeff, I want to interject here. We're at the conclusion of our hour. That was really good, and I have to end on what your last comment was, because it is just the market saving itself. I've been with Charles on a bunch of this journey with this medical world, and you know, they've all come to the realization, the doctors and the consumers, which is a little late to the party, but we need them to keep rushing the doors, is that it's between themselves to resolve healthcare. No government, legislator, nothing. There will be nothing that will salvage it unless we ourselves make that happen. So I appreciate that there seems to be a convergence, interestingly, though, in spite of all this nationalism and everything else. And you're going to be the tip of the spear, sounds like, with your way to start to look at this world. So I appreciate that greatly. We'll have you come join us again. And everyone, thanks for making it today, and we will see you next week. Charles, if you'd like to close it out, and we will end.
Thanks, Jeff. As a preview, over the next few Wednesdays in this month, we have Paul Jacob talking about how we can bypass the politicians to get things done with direct democracy. And then Jeffrey Singer, the doctor at the Cato Institute, who's going to talk about how tragic this war on pain patients is with the opioids. And then we're going to wrap it up with a new spending control group to put these politicians on notice about their overspending. But this has been a great treat, Jeff and Jeff Tucker. Fantastic. You want to tell us how to look for your book and how to follow you at AIER?
Yeah, just if you want to, everybody who's listening, just go to aier.org right now and sign up for our email. We'll take care of everything from there. We send out about 3 a week, but I think it's the best material that you'll see on we study the importance of markets, and that's it. So, and my book will be announced sometime in the next month. Thank you again for inviting me.
Thanks again. My pleasure. Thanks, Jeff.